Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Empowered Women in Business International Radio. We are here with a special guest in our virtual studio, and she is phenomenal. You probably have heard me talk about her books several times on the show because they are phenomenal. Um, but I'll introduce her in a second. So we're going to just start with our quote of the day first. And our quote of the day is: She reads books as one would breathe air to fill up and live, by Annie Dillard. She reads books as one would breathe air to fill up and live, by Annie Dillard. So in a minute, you'll understand why I chose that quote. so we have none other than our phenomenal EWBI sister, Mrs. Amanda Chambers. She is here
Hello.
with us today. Welcome, welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you.
It is such an honor to have you on the show finally.
It's an honor
Um,
to be here.
awesome. So, for our viewers, could you just tell them a little bit about who Amanda Chambers is and
Ooh, mm.
serendipity?
Who is she indeed? So I am a wife and mother. I am a business owner and a best-selling author. I write romance novels, which are the ones that you have probably been referencing. I also have a nonfiction book that is based on the the black communities in Toni Morrison's novels, and I have a children's series that I just started.
Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. So, where did writing come from? Where did that all start from?
Woo. It actually came from reading. So I grew up in some interesting circumstances at times, and one of the ways that I escaped was to read. And I just very much got involved in books and reading. And my love for reading turned into me wanting to write my own stories. And so when I was probably either late elementary school or early middle school, I I started writing my own little stories. I remember the first one that I wrote and turned in for an assignment and got wonderful feedback was I remixed The Ugly Duckling.
Oh,
And yeah. and and so that was my first official foray, I guess, into it. But that's kind of how writing came about. It came from reading.
oh, awesome, awesome. So, when did you start reading? When did you realize that you had that passion for reading?
Um, that is, I don't even have a memory where I wasn't reading or being read to. My mother read to me from probably, I might not have even been born. She might have been reading to me when I was still in the womb. And I just don't remember a world without books.
Wow.
So literally my whole life, my mom said I was reading right around the time I turned 4. I went into preschool reading fully, and went into kindergarten reading and being able to write my own name and my mom's name and my dad's name. So I don't have a memory where there weren't books.
Awesome, awesome. So, when did you decide to turn your passion into your purpose and open up your own publishing company?
That was an accident.
Wow,
A complete
that's a big accident.
a big accident, right?
Yeah.
So, when I turned my love of reading and writing into a degree program. So I have 3 English degrees, and I was teaching college English. And I thought, that's what you do when you like to write and you like to read. You become an English professor, and you're the boring professor up there quoting Chaucer and quoting Shakespeare and quoting Lorraine Hansberry. And folks wonder if you go home and just read, which I did. And that's what I thought that my purpose was. And then in 2015, the college that I was teaching online for decided to close all of its North American campuses, including the campus that housed my online campus. And I'd done well teaching. I'd won awards teaching for them, and they wanted to put me on one of their international campuses. So I'm thinking, it's going to be a Spanish-speaking campus. I might have even been able to muddle through Portuguese because it's so similar to Spanish. No, they wanted to put me on their French campus.
Wow.
I don't speak French. French dressing, French fries. That's my knowledge of French. And so what that turned into was I lost my job. They did a teach out where we taught out the remaining students in the college, and that was it. And so, and we had just moved to Florida from North Carolina. I'm originally from Baltimore. Baltimore. But but I had actually lived in North Carolina since I was a teenager. So North Carolina, was home too. And we moved to Florida for my husband's job. And so we had just moved to Florida in July, and I lost my job in December. And I was like, oh, it's a problem. All my connections and everything, they were in North Carolina. So I'm kind of in a tailspin, like, what am I going to do? My husband was like, simmer down, breathe it out. It's fine. You don't have to worry. I can cover the bills. We're not going to be buying a mansion or, living on a yacht, but I can cover the bills. You just figure out what you want to do. And so I was like, okay. So I really thought about it. And I had started writing this book back in grad school. But I was also writing my thesis, which was a book. And I was paying for that thesis. So I put the fiction book that I was writing aside and finished the book I was paying for because it was quite costly. Oh, and after that, you graduate and, then my first job out of grad school was an 1.5-hour drive, which isn't much in Baltimore, but in North Carolina, I didn't want to do that drive. It was an hour and a half one way.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after that, I got my first full-time, like big-time job. And I was the assistant director of a university writing center. That was 3 jobs in and of itself. So I never had time to pick that book back up. And then after that, I was a first-time mother in my 30s, which, yeah, So, I never had time to pick it back up. So it wasn't until I lost my job. My daughter was 2. So she wasn't a baby anymore. I'd gotten the hang of that mom thing. And I was able to say, you know what? I think I want to try to finish that book and see where that goes since I have this opportunity. And my husband was very supportive. And this was December of 2015. And he kind of looked at me and said, okay, you got until December of 2016 to do what? He said, finish the book and put it out. I said, you can't put a time limit on that. He said, no, I absolutely can, because you'll sit here and play with it. No, that's your hard deadline. And I was like, this is very aggressive, but okay.
But you know what? Sometimes we need that extra push.
Yes.
If he didn't, then like he said, it may have taken you 5 years to write something.
It had been 8 years since I had started the book. So, because I started the book in grad school in the winter break of 2008 into 2009. And here we are sitting at the cusp of 2016. So he was right. I would have sat there and I would have dragged my heels. It's what I do. So I was like, but then he also knows that I don't like to be issued a challenge. So he challenged, he was like, can you do it? And I was like that. Well, yes. So that's what I did. And I decided that I was going to self-publish. One of the things that I had done with my English degree is that I had done freelance editing in and out of the publishing industry. And while I respect traditional publishing and there's a place for everybody and everybody's choices in the publishing industry, I personally did not want to lose control of my work. I wrote that book over the course of, I started it in January. It came out in August. I was done writing it by the end of June.
Now, so
that was Ember's Flame.
Okay.
Yeah. And
we want to talk about Flame, because that Flame is not That just doesn't, flame is just it's not strong enough for what you get out of that book. Like
Yeah.
I'm ready to read it again, and I just finished it.
I went back and read it about 2 years ago, and I was like, "Oh, you kind of did this, okay?"
Let me tell you. So I read that book, and then I read another book in between, and then I read your second book.
Hmm.
And can I tell you, just seeing the difference in the writing was eye-opening to me, because both of the books were kind of graphic at certain times,
Hmm.
but yours was that song, what is it, Bougie Sassy,
Oh, I'm a
Sassy-
savage.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, like you had the more of the, you were so detailed, it was very well written,
Thank you.
and you knew exactly what was going on, but it was just enough. I told people, I said, look, if you want the black version of 50 Shades, then they might want to get your book. Some of those scenes was like, okay, but it wasn't like gross nasty. Like I read another book,
Yeah.
just like, far fetched. I'm like, I don't know too many people that would do that. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I tried to be realistic in the very.
It really came across. So anybody who's just tuning in, we're talking about Ember's Flame. You want to just tell them a little bit about Ember's Flame?
Yes. So, Ember's Flame is about a woman named Ember, and she's kind of a workaholic. She, worked really hard in college, became a junior executive before the age of 30, and was on her chosen path to own her own business. She's in a man's industry, the ad agency, and or advertising and stuff like that. And she is determined not to be kept back because of her gender and her choice of careers. And so she's very focused, but that doesn't leave a lot of time for, romance, fun, and all of that. And she has some friends who are like, no, girl, you need both. And she's like, no, I'm good. I'm on my path. And then she ends up on a cruise because her company is doing an ad campaign and trying to land this cruise line. And so they invite her and her boss, who they're working very close on this ad campaign, on a cruise. And it just so happens that her boss is also fine, and she has the hots for him. And so he has the hots for her as well, and they decide to have a no strings attached affair on the cruise and get way more than they bargained for.
Right. So when I tell you, you want to read this book is so amazing. It really is.
I
I love
appreciate
it. I
that.
talk about it all the time. I really enjoyed reading it. It made me so every day my husband came home from work, I'm reading the book, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, that book must be so good." Like every time then before I go to bed, I'm like trying to read it and get my chapters in. And I'm like, no, you gotta wake up and at least just get to the next chapter. Let's see what happens at the end of this chapter. So it was a great book. And then I moved on, like I said, and then I read Cheyenne's Rock,
Rocky
Rock
Cheyenne.
Cheyenne, Rocky Cheyenne. I had it backwards. So just reading, you want to tell them a little bit about Rocky Cheyenne?
So, Rocking Cheyenne is actually a continuation. So, one thing that I wanted to do with my books was connect them in some way, shape, or form to previous books. Because when I used to read the romance novels when I was younger, and I was stealing my mama's Harlequin. Sorry, mama. Um, sorry, mom. She's gonna kill me for saying that out loud. But when I was stealing her books, the one thing that I did not like um, was that I never knew what happened to them after their story was over. We never circled back. And then in the mid to late 90s, I discovered an author. Her name is Brenda Jackson. Brenda Jackson has several sets of books who they're connected in some way. There's the family connection, Or she has a series where they were all men that served in the military together. There was one where they were all worked for a security company. So in those series, even though they weren't long-standing series, like continue, she has one family series, and that's a very long-standing. They were the original that she started with, but you always got to, in one of the books, revisit a previous couple. You see how they're doing, even though they're not the main characters. You knew that they, continued on. And actually, she's been writing for long enough now that the children that were children in the original books from the mid 90s are now getting their own stories. And I'm like a huge fan of her. So I knew that I wanted to do something similar, but I didn't want it to be a family. I didn't want them to be connected by family. I wanted to be able to branch out past family into friends and stuff like that. So, and then there's another author, Beverly Jenkins, and she writes Black historical romances. And in those, you get to revisit that. And those are my two all-time favorite authors. Like, you can't tell me anything wrong about them. And I knew that I wanted my readers to be able to revisit and see that these people are still together, what they've done and how they've evolved in their relationships, because you only get this like snapshot of them falling in love.
Like also is that they're all Black professional people. They all have Black professional jobs, doing pretty well for themselves, and even Ember, she didn't have to work.
No, she didn't.
I shouldn't have said that.
No, but that's fine, because
that was kind of like a little hidden secret that came out to
me. But no, she didn't. And and I wanted to show different types of professionals as well, because you've got Ember who, went to all this school and, went highly educated. Then you have Cheyenne, and Cheyenne has a degree, but doesn't even use the degree because she found her passion while she was in college, didn't want to change her degree program, and has made a name for herself outside of her degree. She's always got the degree to fall back on, but she's made a name for herself outside of her chosen degree path. And then you've got Gabriella, who owns a hair salon, and she went to hair school first and then circled back and got a business degree so that she could run her own business. So it's different types of, and then you've got Warren, which we'll see Warren again.
Yes. Okay.
And you got Warren, who owns an entire cruise line. I
love it. Like, these are Black professionals doing their thing, not no shooting, no killing. It's just like a positive, romantic love. Like, I love, and that book was like just perfect for me, just perfect, because it gave me that positivity. So, where did you get your ideas from? Was it from that author, or
I can spin a tale in my head, and it's so ironic, and my husband laughs at me all the time because I'm a horrible liar, right? So if I try to tell you a lie, I'm going to stutter through it. I'm not going to remember it in an hour, and you're going to come back and say, well, you said, and I'm like, I said that. No. I'm a horrible liar, but I can spin entire plots in my head, and I can make up the story, and I can write a story, which it's not a lie, but I can make up things. But if I try to lie on the spot and make up a lie, just saying it to you, Nicole,
not gonna work.
It's gonna be terrible. You can be like, why don't you just stop? Like, just stop talking, because I know you're lying. So we're gonna stop this right here. So, but I just randomly think of stuff, and I have thought out. The last time I counted, which I'm old school, so I write my ideas out in notebooks. I have notebooks all over the house. I just told my husband, you got to help me go through my office and consolidate this insanity, because it's overwhelming me now, all these notebooks that I have. But I have plotted out over 50 books. If I could ever sit down and write them.
So will they'll each, I think what I like about the books is they'll each kind of stand alone, but it's still kind of within that series. That is, like, to me, that's like a brilliant idea. And you don't see a lot of people doing that. What made you kind of, you utilize that type of sequence?
Well, because I knew I wanted them connected, but I knew that I didn't want them connected so that if somebody was in a bookstore one day and they picked up, say, Bloom is the name of I'm releasing that information. That's an exclusive. Bloom
Uh-oh.
is the name of the next book.
You
And
heard
so,
it here first on
heard it
Empowering
here first.
Business.
But that's the name. So let's say somebody next year is picking up Bloom, right?
Okay.
They can still read, they can still read Bloom. And then they can go back and they can say, okay, but she has 2 other books. I'm probably going to, go back and read. So they're all connected and they all continue on. But Bloom can stand alone so that when they pick it up, they're not like, oh, I'm not going to pick this one up. I need to go back all the way and go find Ember's Flame so that I can know what's going on. You don't have to read them in order. You can pick them up. They can stand alone. And that was my goal, because a lot of books that are in a series or that are part of a long-standing series, if you pick up in the middle, you're confused. You have no idea what's going on. You got to put down the one that you have, go find the first one, and then read forward. But I didn't want them. I wanted them to be able to stand alone, but still be connected.
So why do you write erotica?
So I honestly feel like I don't write erotica. I get why literary, in a literary scheme of things, they do classify me as such, but I honestly don't feel like I write erotica. I feel like I write real life. And most of the couples that I know, except for one couple, and they are still together and they've been together for a very long time, but every other couple I know, they slept together prior to marriage. So I don't feel like I'm writing something that's out of the ordinary. It's not, people do that. That's common. I always tell this story and people laugh at me, but when I was in college, I got out of a long-term relationship and I was like, okay, look, I'm in college. This long-term relationship didn't work out. I see all my friends coming back from the club. They doing whatever. I'm going to do whatever. I'm just going to, whatever the equivalent of hot girl summer was back in, a long time ago. We're not going to say years because I don't want to.
Brooke has her headphones on, right?
Yes. Brooke has her earphones. Yes, she does. So I was like, I'm just going to go out here. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. So that turned into, my husband and I have been together for 15 years. I called myself going to have a one night stand, and we got married. So apparently I don't do that correctly. I'm not good at that. But that's how I ended up with my husband. And
wow.
Yep. And I called myself having a hot girl summer, whatever that was in that year, long time ago. So wow. Those city girls weren't even thought of then. But so I don't think that I'm writing things that are so extraordinary, out of the ordinary. I just feel like everybody has a different pathway to love. And that's their path. That's the way that they fall in love. That's how their relationship evolves,
And honestly, like you said, in society now, it's more realistic actually than the, picket fence and marriage first, unfortunately. So
yeah, we are a different society, from even when I was a kid, so I just don't think, but I understand why, there is no category for real life romance. That category doesn't exist. So I see why they categorize me as such, and I'm fine with it, but I just like to make sure that it at least says erotic romance, because erotica is a whole genre of a lot of different subject matter.
But I think it fits in a good way.
Yeah. So, that's why I always say it like that.
It does still have that romantic core. So it is. So what advice would you give to, well, let's go here first. What motivated you to become an indie author?
I couldn't see myself giving up control the way that I had seen control being given up in traditional publishing. I did editing, freelance editing. I actually edited for a couple of publishing companies. I was involved in a small boutique publishing company for almost a year. And I don't have anything, you know, I don't think it's anything wrong with wanting to be just a writer. You just want to be a writer, and you just want to put your book, do your book, write your book, and, you know, keep it moving and turn it in and then walk away from it. And they do the editing, they do the promotion, they do the book cover, they do the, you know, everything. And you walk away from it. I'm okay with other people. That just wasn't me. I don't want to be without control of my book. I don't want to walk away and not really have much say in the cover. I don't want to give up my coins. You know, there's that royalty situation, and, you know, royalties can, what they take can be quite high sometimes. And I didn't bounce my 2-year-old on my knee and play with her with one arm while I'm typing with the other hand for you to get the bulk of what I can pull in as a writer. I just didn't want to give up the control for several reasons. And so that is what kind of led me on the self-publishing journey. And that journey then turned into, I did so well with my first book. When my first book released, it was on my birthday in 2016. And one of the things that I learned, well, two of the big things that I learned when I was researching, because my husband, he loves to call me a nerd. Everything that I ever want to know, I will go and get a book or several books and read about it. And so I did a lot of research. And one of the things that I learned was that you need to, you know, brand yourself. And you have to brand yourself, and you have to learn social media. And see, I'm a relic. I'm old, and I had an Instagram account and I had a Twitter account, and I, in 3 years, had maybe posted 4 or 5 times total on those. But I was all over Facebook. So I took classes on branding and social media. I ended up getting certified in social media marketing and management and branding, individual branding, which is the branding of a small business or an individual. And I did a lot of footwork before the book came out. When it came out on my birthday, I released the links and, you know, put up all the social media posts. And then I actually closed my computer and walked away from it. And I will never forget, one of my sorority sisters, Tanya, hey, Tanya, called, and she was kind of like, you know, freaking out on the phone. And she was like, Amanda. And I'm like, what? And she goes, go to your computer. And I'm like, okay. And I'm starting to freak out because I think I did something wrong. You know, this is the first time I had self-published. And so I'm like, oh, Amazon took the book down. What did I do? And I went, and she goes, scroll down to your ranking. And then I saw that I had hit #1 on my Amazon chart.
Wow.
And I was like,
for you to hit #1?
huh?
And how long did it take for you to hit #1?
The day I released the book.
Awesome. Wow.
So I was like,
it is worth it. I would go visit Legacy Book Bar and purchase Ember's Flame because it is worth it.
Yep. And Legacy Book Bar actually has both books. So Legacy Book Bar carries Ember's Flame and Rocking Cheyenne.
Yes. And I recommend both. As a matter of fact, as we're talking about Legacy Book Bar, I see that Menina Bush, Legacy Book Bar owner, is on, and she said, my ladies,
hey,
she said, run them, sis, run them. You know, her little inside
yes. Whenever she needs new books, whenever she sells out of my books, she tells me, I'll get a text message that says, run them, sis, because she needs more books.
Now, people know I do throw people under the bus sometimes. So I'm getting ready to throw Menina under the bus because she got all of these red hearts on this comment, and our color is purple.
Oh, purple.
Menina, yes. Wow. You the vice president. You got to be on top of those things.
Menina.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Woo, girl. I don't know, because 5 years ago, I hadn't even put a book out.
Wow.
My book came out on August 27th of 2016. So it's just coming up on 4 years. 5 years ago, I was a college professor with a baby that was about to turn 2. We had not moved to Florida yet. We moved in July. So to tell me, number one, that I'd be back in North Carolina, because God knows I was happy to get back. But, you know, and that I would own a business and that higher education had taken a back seat. I'm still in it. I still work for the greatest HBCU ever, North Carolina Central University. But I, you know, to tell me that that would take a back seat and that I would be full time with my own publishing company, my own self publishing company, you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I'd have been like, you're adorable. Go somewhere else with that. So, you know, to ask me where I'd be, like, I don't even know. Like, I hope, you know, that Divine Legacy Publishing in 5 years is pulling up on maybe, you know, 150 authors. We're sitting at 61 now, 62.
We don't say hope, we claim things here on.
Well, then we will be sitting at 150 to 200 authors. You know, and I want to start offering classes. You know, people will still have the option to work directly with me, but if they want to take classes instead, because I am still a teacher, you know, I'm still, you know, people are like, oh, you got all those degrees. Aren't you upset you're not using them? But I am using them.
Right.
You know, I am. Publishing industry falls under it, you know,
for yourself. So that is a great, two things. One, what would you tell an inspiring author who's listening and may want to utilize your services?
The first thing I would say is finish that book, sis. It's going to haunt you. Ask me how I know. I didn't have the time to finish it, but I always thought about that book. And I actually had one friend who maybe every 6 months, because I let her read those first chapters before I ever picked it back up. When I first wrote it in 2008, later on that 6 months later, I let her read it. And she was always like, you know, we'll finish this book. I need to know what happens next.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
Yeah. So, well, you know how she had to feel like that for 8 years.
Oh no, I would have been extremely upset with you.
She was. But the first piece of advice is finish that book. Finish it. It's gonna haunt you. It's gonna bother you. It was always in the back of my mind. And that's why the first opportunity that I had to pick it up and finish it, I did. So that's the first piece of advice. When it comes to working with me, I would love to work with you. But even if you don't want to seek out the assistance of a coach or a consultant or something, just make sure you do your research. One of the biggest things that hurts a self-published author is to not do your market research and your industry research. And then you have a book that is not formatted correctly, that is not edited properly, that is not up to industry standard. And you did all this work. You wrote this book, you put your time and your effort into it, and you have something that is not sellable. It's not, you know, bookstores won't pick it up. You know, they have standards that you still have to meet, even if you don't have a traditional publishing company backing you. They still hold you to those standards. So do your research, understand what you're entering into. I tell all my authors, it's a small business. You are an authorpreneur. You have to approach it like a business. You must. That's not saying it doesn't take the fun out of it, because I have an enormous amount of fun. You know, I love what I do. I love writing. I love having my own books, but you also have to do the business side of it. You just have to.
So your marketing and branding for your authors, tell us a couple steps because we have a lot of small business owners and we have big business owners too that tune in, and just women professionals that may be tuned in and may want to branch out and do something. What are some tips that you would give them surrounding the lines of branding and marketing?
Social media is your friend, but you have to know how to use it. That is a big one. Each platform, so the top three are, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. each has its own personality, each has its own algorithm, each has its own way of working. Facebook is share driven. You see people all the time. You're friends with me on Facebook. You see me sharing all kind of stuff from all different pages. You want to put shareable content, things that people will want to share, and that will gain you traction there. Twitter is conversation driven. It's, and me and Twitter, we have a love-hate relationship, because how dare you limit the amount of characters that I can use? You've got a lot of nerve. But it is conversation driven. You want to have conversations, and you want to say things that will make people want to retweet you and share what you're saying, right? And then, of course, we have Instagram. Pictures and hashtags make Instagram's world go round. And so you want to make sure that you educate yourself on the unique attributes. And I just glazed over it. There's so much more. But you want to make sure that you acknowledge and you understand those unique attributes, and you're just not blindly posting on social media, because it's not going to work for you. I put a post up with everything that's going on in the country. I actually put a post up on my author Instagram about 2 weeks ago. And it was a picture of protesters from the early 60s. And one of the women in the picture was holding a sign that said, stop police brutality. And over top of it, it said, this picture is 55 years old. And I just put it up there, and I used hashtags. And I have about 1,300 followers, 1,300 followers on my author Instagram. My use of hashtags let me reach 14,000 people. 14,000 people. And from my hashtags, using the hashtags that I did, was 13,000 of those people were reached.
Wow.
So that you have to understand. You don't have to be, I'm kind of an old pro at it now, although it evolves so much that I take recertification all the time. But you don't have to be a pro at it. You just have to understand how hashtags work. You have to understand how each social media platform works, so that you can make it work for you. I don't pay for ads. I don't sponsor ads. I don't pay for stuff. I am one of the worst penny pinchers you will ever meet. My husband just had to have a nice long conversation with me about buying a new computer, because my old computer is a 2011 MacBook Pro, which is a good computer, but I said 2011 as in it's 2020.
Right.
So my computer's 9 years old, and he had to sit me down and say, you do everything on this computer. You need a new computer. Stop playing. So I don't like to pay for things. So I don't pay for ads, but I still reach who I need to reach, because I understand how social media works. So that's one of the biggest things and for social media. And then for branding, be consistent in your brand. If you go to any of the brands that I'm over, because I actually have, of course, Divine Legacy Publishing, my publishing company, Serendipity, which is the pseudonym that I write under, because I don't want my students from the best HBCU ever, North Carolina University, to easily Google me and find my romance novels. That's not what I'm teaching you guys. You write narrative essays. You don't read my books. So so I don't. I write under a pseudonym. So, but those are very different brands, and you will go, and unless you know that they're both me, you don't know that you don't put them together. And I also have a blog called Retro Modern Mandy, because, well, that's who I am. And again, you see a different side of me there. With the author brand, you see the romance novelist. I post all kind of romance facts and self-care, because most of my readers are women. And so we notoriously don't take care of ourselves. So, I post that. And of course, my book ads and stuff like that. When you go to Divine Legacy Publishing, you see a Black-owned business with, my authors and their book covers and publishing tips and all of that. But then when you go to Retro Modern Mandy, you see that I homeschool my daughter, and you see me out in the garden, and so they're all me, but they're specific branded parts of me that that manifest in those brands. And so it's important to be consistent. If you're supposed to be an uplifting brand that makes people happy, then you can't be posting melancholy stuff. That doesn't even make sense.
Right.
Your colors shouldn't be drab colors. If you're supposed to be uplifting, your colors should be bright. Your writing should be eye-catching. And so it's important to know how to brand yourself and to be consistent in your brand.
So you mentioned that you're a blogger. Tell us a little bit about your blogging.
So I started blogging a long, long time ago, back when they, Blogger and Blogspot and everything was really big. And then I got out of it because, again, grad school just mucked up a lot of stuff. I mean, it was great, but it got in the way. So when I got to grad school, I was writing, 15-page papers, didn't leave a lot of time for blogging. So my blog is still up there in the internets, I call them the national internets. It's still up there. But I wanted to do a blog because one of the biggest reasons is I am what's considered crunchy, right? So when somebody says, "Oh, you're crunchy," that means that it's the newest way to say a hippie, basically, tree hugger. So we eat all organic, non-GMO. I'm actually a vegetarian. My daughter doesn't eat pork or beef. If I could wean her off of this turkey bacon, she's not coming willingly off of the turkey bacon. And then my husband, he is still a meat eater, but still all organic, non-GMO, and try to eat as natural as possible. Not a lot of ingredients and stuff like that. And it's not a lot of Black bloggers out there that do that are like out there, because you tell people, "Oh, you eat organic," and they're like, "Oh, you eat twigs and berries?" No, fool, who eats twigs? What is a twig? Who eats those? Why? And so you get a lot of kickback, and so there's not a lot of people out there that have just come out. And we're also homeschoolers. So when you think of homeschoolers, you think of like the weird kids from the 80s, and that's just not the case anymore. We're not socially inept. My daughter is more than social. Sometimes I'm like, "Hey, yo, stop talking to strangers." So I wanted to give a face to that. It's the same reason why I also have started a children's book series based on my daughter. It's called Brooks Homeschool Chronicles. And the first book, What Jobs Can Girls Do, is out. She actually asked me that one day. And so I started naming all of the girls that she knows who have jobs and jobs they do. And I thought to myself, if this girl is surrounded by women who have amazing jobs that do amazing things, and she didn't know that girls can do anything they want, there's other little girls out there that don't know. And so my goal was to write that book and provide that information.
What age range would you recommend for that book?
Early to middle of elementary. Okay. It's the square books. I should have brought it and sat it next to me, but it's those square books, and I wrote it for her age range, and she'll be 7 in a couple of weeks, so about that time frame. So, but I just wanted, when she asked me, I was like, "What do you mean? Mommy owns businesses, and Mimi is a social worker. Your grandma Wanda makes hats, and Auntie Tarika is a female podcaster at ESPN. You know that, and I just kept saying all these, different women that did stuff all the way back to my grandmother. My great grandmother worked for a Department of Veterans Affairs in the 40s and 50s.
Wow.
Yeah. And then my great great grandmother owned a restaurant during the Depression, and her business did not suffer.
Wow.
Right there in Baltimore, so to have this child have this lineage, and she asked me that, I was like, I need to write a book about this.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you are so accomplished. I have to ask you this: how do you manage your time?
Don't ask me. Don't ask me that. You're friends with me on Facebook. You see me posting randomly 3:00 in the morning. Amanda, go to bed. Go to bed.
You know what the problem is with that? That I'm up too.
You're seeing it too. I need to start posting Amanda and Nicole, go to bed. But I have gotten better. One of the things that I had to learn was business. So I was a teacher with no business aspirations at all. And so that was a serious learning curve the first couple of years. And there were a lot of nights I didn't go to sleep. And then, as soon as I go to sleep at about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, here comes Brooke at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, mommy. And I'm like, but now I have a client management system. I have a lot of help. I have a great executive assistant. Shout out Brielle. Hey girl. And I have people who make sure that I'm not doing too much. My mother, my husband, Monica, my graphic designer, she will run up on me real quick and be like, "You go sit down somewhere for a minute." Okay. So
EWBI sisters.
Yep, I have my EWBI sisters. I have my sorority sisters. Shout out Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. I have a lot of people who believe in me, and that's a big thing. But they believe in me, but they also know that I will go hard and not stop. And so, I have one of my sorority sisters, Aquila. She lives in California, so she's 3 hours behind. So she'll see me at 3 o'clock in the morning, post something on Facebook, and I'll get a nice text message or a Facebook message that says, "Go to bed." And I'm like, man, I can't hide from no one. So, they definitely look out for me. And I have a small group of some of my sweetheart sisters and sorority sisters who we all own small businesses. And so we get in there and we share ideas and we do that. And so I have an amazing circle, and that circle makes sure that I don't overdo it and that I do time manage and that I do allow myself self-care time. Because like I said, the first 2 years, I didn't even, matter of fact, DLP, that's short for Divine Legacy Publishing. We opened our doors on January 1st of 2017, the first vacation that I took where I just literally was not doing anything was this past Christmas.
Wow.
Christmas of 2019. Yeah. So you couple that with homeschooling, which I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I'm her teacher. So in the morning, we're homeschooling until the early afternoon. I go straight from homeschooling into early afternoon client calls, work for Central for late mid-afternoon, early evening, and then go into my evening calls with my clients. So on a very busy day, I'm not done until 9, 10 o'clock at night. So, and coronavirus has my husband home. He's working from home. So that's been a blessing, because now if I'm on the phone with a client and I hear a little voice saying, "Mommy, I'm so hungry, I need a snack," I say, "Go ask your father." So, there's the voice. Say it. But that, so that has been a big help. So I'm hoping that, maybe his company says, "You've done so well with, working from home, that don't worry about it. You just work from home from now on." That'd be awesome.
Oh yeah. I'm hoping my company says the same thing, because even with the radio station, I'm like, I love it this way. I don't ever see myself going back into the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about driving through the rain, the thunderstorms, the snow.
Yep.
The show will go on no matter what.
And a lot of people are learning that now. And actually, I love working from home. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I'm also hoping that businesses and small businesses, and we're learning from this, that you don't have to occupy a space if you don't want to, and that businesses can, they can save a lot of money having people work from home. You can use smaller spaces, you can use shared spaces, because a good portion of your workforce works from home and they come in for meetings, or they come in once a week and they can share spaces. Right. So I'm hoping that, maybe this changes the way we do some business.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have learned to kind of think out of the box with utilizing virtual tools. to help us to have those meetings. Even, where my nonprofit, Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth, is having a virtual summer camp for girls.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so just thinking out of the box during this time to see what people have come up with is amazing. Through the riots and, all of the societal ills and the racism,
Mhm.
it just has warmed my heart to see us as a people kind of come together, rally together, whether it was just, to put on a funeral or whether it was to change some laws, but we're coming together to
And
do
I
it
love it.
and
I
supporting business.
love it.
Yeah, yes. So I think, sometimes at the end of the storm, there's always that rainbow. And that's what we have to look at. Some people were complaining about COVID. Oh, blah, blah, blah. I was like, look, I think COVID was supposed to be a blessing. The blessing was for us to find each other as a family together. I see
Mhm.
families coming together, spending more time on Zoom and, different other avenues.
Checking in on each other when they
Yeah,
weren't checking in before, and
yeah.
communities being closer because we scared to leave the neighborhood now, and
How about that? So,
and people
just
looking out for
opening.
each other.
Right. Just opening our minds to things and not be, not always, well, I always look at things, the glass is always half full for
Right.
me versus half empty. But, just trying to look at things in a different light so that we can be positive and move our nation to another level. I see so many things happening. I see that the speaker is requesting a change on one of the state songs recently,
Mhm.
yeah, in Maryland, and I think that's amazing. And then we're getting some of these racist statues knocked down, and
So happy to see it. People
yeah,
don't realize just because it's a national monument doesn't mean that it doesn't affect people who you view it in a negative manner. And
yeah,
it is negative. You don't see, and I always use this example, you don't see um, Holocaust statues and Hitler statues and stuff like that in Germany. You
that's
don't
right.
see those things because they are considered societal ills. They are considered nasty marks on the history of that country, and they don't acknowledge them. And here they're celebrated. And I just will never understand how you can just celebrate something so negative and so
Or
ugly.
even just delete some of the positive things that we have contributed to history, and it's just not located in the history books that our children utilize. Like I taught my children about Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, when that man, did what
Mhm.
he did, he thought he was doing something against us, but it wound up backfiring
Big time.
because so many people start talking about Black Wall Street. I have not heard so many people talk about Black Wall Street. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she has a business that she named after Black Wall Street because she brings together all of these vendors and have a Black Wall Street right there under one roof. So it's just amazing to see what has come from the corona and the racism.
Yep.
So we look at those things. Yes, of course, they're bad things because they're killing people, but you also have to see them for what they are. They're making changes. Like we're being able to affect change in a positive way, and that's amazing.
And it's amazing, and it's so many people that even Black folks, if you only rely on learning what they taught you in school, they sugarcoated and watered down history. And Black history, especially when I was coming up, was February, and it was, oh, there was slavery, then there was struggle, but Black people are great now. That was Black history. And if it wasn't for my family being some
Mm-hmm.
won't use the word militant, but we'll act like I didn't use the word militant. And they made sure that I knew Black history, not what was being taught in schools, but real Black history. So like your children, I knew about Black Wall Street. I knew about Jim Crow. I knew about Black codes. I knew about all of that. They did not sugarcoat. And not only that, but they did not start at slavery. I knew African history. I knew all of that because they were not going to have me walking around not aware of who I was and where I came from. And so I see a lot of people now that, we're posting about Black Wall Street, we're posting about this, and they're learning because they weren't aware, because their education in Black history was literally whatever the school system taught them, which was another reason why we wanted to homeschool. But it's nice to see people learning as well.
That's right. So we have, let's see, Jaconda Harrison says, "Hey sisters," and she is the founder of Women, Wine, and Wisdom. So hey, Jaconda.
Hey.
And Stephanie said, "Amen. It was definitely an indirect blessing." Hey, Steph, that's one of our EWBI sisters. Jaconda also says, "Growing up before they took genuine interest out of school, I learned history has a deep-rooted message." Bridget Cofield says, "Yes, we have to teach our own history. I teach my son."
Hey, Bridget, that's my sweetheart sister. Hey, Bridget.
Hey, Bridget, I like that picture.
Ain't she cute?
Yeah, she better go ahead. I got that dress too. I love that dress. And Stephanie said, "Heard nothing about Black Wall Street until Destiny named her business after it. That made me learn the history behind it." Oh,
that's good.
Thanks, sis. So, yeah, so it's just amazing. We do want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in this evening. Before we wrap up, I'm going to just share a little bit about Empowered Women in Business International. But first, I want to just thank you, Amanda, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It was so good to learn a little bit more about my sister.
Yes.
What do you like? So let's end your question session with two questions. So one, what do you think about Empowered Women in Business International? And two, how can people?
I love Empowered Women in Business International, and you and Menina can vouch, because I live in a different state. You were like, "You want to wait?" And I was like, "Nah, let me in. I'm good." So, I love it. I love the sisterhood and the learning that we do together, and the information sharing, and just how we look out for each other. And then you said, how can they find me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm all over the place. Okay. So on Instagram, you can find me at Author Serendipity, which is my pseudonym, Serendipity, or Divine Legacy Publishing. On Twitter, because they have those pesky counts on there, those character counts, you can find me as Divine Legacy Pub or Auth Serendipity. I had to cut off some letters. And then on Facebook, it's just like Twitter, Author Serendipity or Divine Legacy Publishing, LLC. And on the web, you can find me at www.divinelegacypublishing.com or authorserendipity.com. I sound like the end of a commercial, don't I?
.com.
.com.
So again, thank you so much for joining us, and awesome job, Brooke, if you can hear me.
She can hear you. She turned around, she said, "Hey."
So Empowered Women in Business International serves a sisterhood of women entrepreneurs who understand that individually we can do great things, but collectively we can forever change the world. Members of our movement experience a support system that allows them to celebrate their wins and share their struggles in a series of opportunities that enhance them personally and professionally. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then you can visit our website at www.ewbiradio.org. We would love to have you. And we would have our membership coordinator, Menina Bush, reach out to you and get you all set up. So don't forget to visit www.ewbiradio.org. And we're going to end like we always do with our EWBI's motto, which is individually we could do great things, but collectively we could forever change the world, by Nick Mosby. So don't forget to tune in every Tuesday evening at 8:05 right here on Empowered Women in Business International Radio. Shout out to Awesome God Radio Station for producing our segment, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Bye.